Hello, Oh! Hey!
Don't let me interrupt, please.
I was just about to say hello to everyone, but how are you doing, Rob? Give me one.
Now tell me, don't lie. How many pull-ups can you do?
Oh. Shh, that's a secret. I don't want to admit to anyone that that's just decorative.
Listen, everything that you can achieve is something to be commended. Be honest. Tell us right now.
Okay, you want to know the honest to God truth? I'm actually
Yes,
quite
I
proud
do.
of this.
Please.
If it's without a weight, I think I can get a solid 12.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wide grip.
Okay, let's calm down, dude. Let's calm down. Neutral grip.
You
12.
know where this is headed, right? We
No.
need to see this happen.
No, please,
The people
Rob.
demand it.
I just got back from the gym. I just had a back day today.
Oh,
But,
sure. Listen, we all just got back from the gym.
Tell you what.
See what we can do here.
Tell you what. By the end, I promise you, if it's neutral grip, I'll give you 5. I'll give you 5 solid ones.
Okay, I'll take it. 5 neutral grip. I love the sound of that.
Yeah, we're gonna see how that goes. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm thrilled to be here. Are we on? Or
Yes, I just want to tell you. I was about to introduce you to the viewers, but yeah, we're live now. So I welcome.
Great. Well, then I hope. Well, listen. Where do I see the chat? Send me a link so I can.
The chat will be on the twitch.tv.indieden. The people are still coming in.
What are we, animals? Drop me a link in the chat.
I'm about to do that. Let me figure this out. Once I'm not the most tech savvy individual.
You got it.
There we go. The people are coming in because basically we have this Discord with twitch.tv/indieden, and I also have quite a few questions from Reddit as well.
Please,
if you don't mind. Man, this is I feel like I'm getting a little starstruck. There we go.
Well, you must be on a call with somebody else at the same time.
Pin this message. I'm pinning it. They're coming in. Give them a few minutes. They're a little slow, but just so you know, I just want to make sure it's these tend to be recorded, and unless you're not completely cool with that, and we put them on YouTube so that people can watch them again. And there's a lot because it's a Friday. A lot of people are at work, unfortunately.
Sure.
So, but man, I was looking at your resume, and I have to admit, how can I not be starstruck? You've worked on my childhood, my friend. This is.
Oh God, wait, how old are you? Hold on. How old am I? That's deeply distressing to me.
No. Well, Crysis was right when I was in high school, right? So Crysis 1 and Crysis 2 was 10th and 11th grade. Your UK system, correct?
This means that my flesh may as well crumble off of my skull.
Why?
You were in high school when I was working on it?
Man, but it feels surreal to see somebody like who's worked on something so big. What was that like?
What was that like?
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, when you're working on something that big, it takes so long. It was good and bad and everything in between because you're doing it for. That was. God, do you know what? I don't even remember how long we were on cycle for that. But it's got to be at least 3 years plus pre-pro, so maybe 4.
You guys worked on that for 3 years?
Well, AAA stuff is often longer than that. I've worked on games that, to get something that is even what would be considered now like indie AAA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even something like that, around 2016, 2017. There are so many ways that production can go wrong that are nothing to do with the devs, that are really about, okay, do we have the money in the right place at the right time for the right people, the right partnerships, the right input from those partners? That I worked cycles that took 7 years to do a single game. So it's hard to do what we do, guys. It's
Jesus
hard.
Christ, a fucking decade. Let me just 1 second. Let me make sure everybody's gotten the notifications because it's the viewership is a little bit low. I just want to make sure they're all coming in.
Maybe they got the notification about the guest, and that's why.
Sorry?
Maybe they got the notification about your guest.
No, unlikely. No, we actually got quite a few people who were interested. They reserved a little spot, so that's why I'm a little bit confused. I just want to make sure also my audio is working and everything, because I am obviously not the most tech savvy guy. Sorry. Let me just message them in the chat. Is everything working? I'm sorry about that, Rob. We're still a little bit of a
Right?
new production, and we're still learning how to get things under control. But we're actually, I don't know. Do you navigate Reddit much or no?
A little bit.
Okay, so we're part of the indie games subreddit, which has around 250,000 members, and we realized the majority of them are game devs. A lot of them are indie game devs, and when you're an indie game dev, you wear all the hats in the company and everything. So a lot of
Mhm.
these people are very curious. I'm trying to understand how the whole writing process goes, and
Sure.
personally, I'm probably one of many failed authors who had a dream of being an author when I was younger, and then kind of I was like, oh, next year I'll write the book. Next year I'll write the book, and
What are you
it's
committing suicide tomorrow? You still got time. What do
yeah,
you mean?
that's true, but it's
What's stopping you from doing it? Let's dig into this. So the dream was to write something. Was there? But it was books, is what you wanted to do?
Yes, actually, hello. We just got a hello from Peach Cobblers. Okay, people are starting to come in, but the biggest thing is.
Yes. My work here is done. Pitch Goblins, give us a hello. That's good night,
There
everybody.
we go. I think my biggest thing, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, and maybe you can help out with this. It's how do you overcome your fear of not being good enough to tell the story that you have in your head? That's the biggest thing I struggle with. Sometimes I have some ideas that I think are novel to a certain extent. Obviously, they're not in the realm of literature, but I want to write something that I really believe is profound, and but I feel like my writing skills are not up to par with what I'm trying to make. So
Mhm.
how do you
When
overcome
you
that?
first started using your pull-up bar, how many pull-ups could you do?
That's a valid point. That's a very valid point.
How many could you do? The
Yeah,
first you brought it
none,
into the
none,
house, you're like,
zero,
okay,
zero.
zero. You brought it in and you had zero.
Exactly.
Okay, and how many now you're saying? Neutral grip 12 is what
Neutral
your
grip
mind's talking
12, and I
about?
can do it with 20 kilos attached.
You can do 12 with 20
No,
kilos?
no, no, no. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's calm down. 5 with 20 kilos attached, and
Listen,
12.
that's impressive, and we're all
Thank you.
excited to see you do that imminently on the
We'll have to
stream.
find the 20 kilos.
But
Yes.
that's the point, right? Number one is
Hmm.
reps.
Yep.
The fact is, all artists come into the way of the arts with this white hot magnesium burn, the need to express, the need to be creative. And what we're usually missing is craft,
I
the
see.
means to express ourselves. And as you rightly say, the distance from your forehead to the page could not be further. Seems so simple, but that is
Yeah.
the furthest possible distance to a writer, from forehead to the page.
It feels counterintuitive though, because at least to me, the writing process feels like it should be creative, and within creativity, I always feel like I shouldn't be constrained by my lack of talent, by my lack of well.
It's craft. Okay, so let me talk you through this. So
Hmm.
before I became, well, one of many things that I did before I ended up where I am now is
Hmm.
I went to art school in London. I thought I was going to be a performance artist. That was my ambition, my dream. One of the reasons why I loved performance art over, say, painting or sculpture or photography or any of that stuff was, to me, it was the purest form of art because it wasn't interrupted by the notion of craft. I didn't need to know how to do something in order to express a notion. We
Hmm.
just did it. And to some degree, that's a good thing. There's freedom in making art that way. But if you feel drawn to a discipline, remember, it's part art, which is your expression, and it's part craft, which is how you do it.
That's very deep, and I actually. Do you do exercises in and of your like to prepare for writing? Is there anything you recommend to people who are trying to get into
I think
the?
it depends on the individual. People have different processes. For me, I go to great lengths to de-romanticize the process. I don't need to have a special place or a special time or a special method or a
Yeah.
special ritual,
Hmm.
because those are usually crutches.
That's yeah.
Or, some people do things like they'll say, oh, I'll write this character bio for 5, 10, 15 pages. I'm going to write this character bio. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter, because if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage, as they say.
That's
So these are usually ways to try and make yourself feel more confident. But in reality, the thing that makes you feel more confident is doing another pull-up.
that's true. And I think this is even more pertinent in your case because you end up having to make a living out of it, correct? And that means that
Sure.
you don't have that you have people to answer to, which means you have to be able to write down, you have to be able to turn in certain things by a deadline. How do you manage being able to be creative with an overhead and an oversight? Do they get like, especially in AAA, I have to admit I don't really know how it works. Do they tell you like this is the direction we want, Rob, give us something, or do they let you write the plot and they like actually we kind of like this, we don't like this? How does it work in AAA gaming?
It varies from production to production,
Okay.
and I think most people would agree, most devs would agree that you almost never build a game on top of a story. You build it on top of design, and then the story explains the content. That's usually the job of a games writer. Is somebody made some content, a writer comes in and explains it. We contextualize the content, which is to say, hey, this block moving along and jumping and hitting other blocks is fun. What if he was a plumber called Mario trying to rescue a princess? We contextualize it. As far as how do you manage that role, I see behind you paintings on the wall. Are they yours?
No, they're my father's little escapades. He likes to have fun and just yeah.
Okay. I see that they are two different size of canvas.
Yes.
So I'm going to guess if he's an amateur artist,
Mm-hmm.
or let's say or a non-professional artist,
Yes.
he didn't say, I want a canvas that is X by Y. He bought some canvases.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
some
yeah.
of them are size A and some of them are size B.
Exactly.
That's what it's like working in AAA, which is to say everything is a canvas. It's just a
I
different
see.
size. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to make this AI system seem really smart by the box that I'm going to write for it. But there are only 4 possible things that the AI can know. So, okay, how can I try and make that interesting with the way that I write it?
I have to ask, is it much, because you've also worked in cinema, and I mean, your accolades speak for themselves, and you've worked as well in TV, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Not so much in TV. I did a little bit very early in my career, but not a thing that a
Okay.
human being would have seen.
Would okay. Would what is that like to have such a, I mean, TV, or not TV, but movies, and have such a linear and method of storytelling as opposed to video games where the story can sometimes even have multiple endings, it can go different ways, you have a lot more engagement from the player. How do you craft, I guess, differently for these things?
The rules and principles of Aristotle's poetics have been the same for 3,000 years.
Okay.
All you're doing with a game is, okay, in fairness, okay, the last 120 years, a movie has been 2 hours and somebody learns something about themselves, and that's the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, games seem like this litany of formats, but really what you're doing is you're taking the component pieces of storytelling that we all know to be true, and
Yeah.
you're designing an equation that will deliver narrative in that individual product. So nobody is really inventing storytelling in games. We are creating equations from known methods of storytelling.
Yeah, I remember somewhere, this was a while back when I took creative writing in college back in the day, but our teacher told us there was like some like 7 types of stories, and everything was a different offshoot of that. So is it, I guess, is that echoing what you're saying of like,
Kind of. It's not that there's only so many types of story, but the principle of story is a method for character change. That's what we know it to be. Unless you're talking about sort of avant-garde stuff that is really sort of anti that. But generally speaking, the fiction that most people enjoy is about transition of some kind.
and
And
personally,
when you're designing a game, you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I express transition of some kind? Almost every game story is something to do with that.
man, I feel like I should be taking notes at the moment, but I'm happy I'm
We're
recording
recording
this.
it on YouTube. Everyone's recording.
Exactly, I'm gonna watch this and take notes after. But okay. And personally, do you prefer writing for film or video games, or do you feel like
Well, the difference is that
yeah.
when you're writing a movie, the thing that's great about it is that you can try and polish it to a high shine, because the conditions placed on it are specific and linear.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the finished product of a game, to some degree, is a collaboration between me and someone who I'm never going to meet, which is the player.
That's true.
And so the joy of it is not really knowing, even though you have the confines of design, you don't really know exactly how they're going to experience it. And that's the fun of making games.
And I mean, and the crazier part, I think, is even being able to manage storytelling in games like, I mean, you worked on Rhyme, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
which don't have such a present story in the sense of like The Witcher 3, which has sometimes 20-minute cinematics where there's a very in-your-face narrative. It can be a little bit more nuanced, more subtle. How do you work around these like different, I guess, not issues, but hurdles where all of a sudden you don't have the same tools to convey your story? Like, what do you...
well, for anybody that doesn't know, Rhyme is a sort of Studio Ghibli-looking project.
It's very beautiful.
That we were trying to tell a story that's as rich and allegorical as something like Life of Pi.
Mm-hmm.
But we did the whole thing with no dialogue. So it's 10 hours without dialogue.
I'm just showing them in the chat, by the way. Sorry, I'm just showing them.
Sure.
You can keep talking.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you're standing in front of a work of art, right? If you're
Mhm.
standing in front of a Mark Rothko painting, right? A big monolithic, abstract painting.
Mm-hmm.
The painting is not saying something specific. It's not a painting of a haystack. It's not a painting of a man on a horse. It's a painting of something that you feel looking at it. There's something within the art that reaches out from the painting and touches you. Is it... I had an art tutor who said that art fills a God-shaped hole. And you don't know what shape that hole is, but you know when it's filled. And that was our ambition with Rhyme, is to say, can we reach people in the manner that fine art reaches people from the wall of a museum?
But okay, I'm a little confused. I'm a little bit of a ape brain over here, so please bear with me. But from what I understood before, you just said essentially you don't necessarily want to say anything to the player. You want to let them come to their own conclusions, correct?
No, I wouldn't. That's not necessarily true either. Ambiguity is a tool as much as specificity is, and we undulate between those two places.
Do you have examples of this in Rhyme where you can like explain how you can tell a story without actually? Because I'm trying to visualize your work as a storyteller.
So at the start of the game,
Mm-hmm.
A boy wakes up on a beach alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even just saying that, there's so much you're already inferring from it.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to him? How did he end up on the beach? Why is he alone?
Yeah.
That's a single moment, a single image. And you just try and unfold the story in a way that what you see elicits a question that either you have no idea how to answer, so it pulls you forward, or the question is answered through the context of your experience to that moment, and so you feel you understand its meaning.
Okay.
What does it mean?
It's hard to wrap, especially because maybe because the last year and a half I've been working on really cutting down my game story, making it as linear and as straightforward as possible. So having this ability to take a big step back and watch a master at work, whereas my story is basically somebody kidnapped your cat, let's go save him. It feels a little bit
There's
humbling.
nothing wrong with that too. These are all primal motives, right?
Yeah.
Escape, rescue,
Yeah.
revenge.
Wait.
And Rhyme is no different. It's
Mm-hmm.
the compulsion to find out why you're alone, which, by the way, is a very human condition. So we're telling a literal story in which that's happening. Why am I alone? And at the same time, starting to try and pull in visual elements that evoke that same feeling outside of the screen within the player themselves. Why am I alone?
Okay.
That's not to say this is how you should be telling your game story.
Yeah,
It's just how you happen to do it
it's
with
just
one individual
I
player.
want to store all this information and try to understand it as well. And you're very eloquent, so it's a little intimidating. I hope you understand. I'm trying
No,
to.
look, it's the truth is,
Yeah.
that same teacher who taught me fine art when I first went to art school
Yes.
really believed, and I also believe, that art is a language that cannot be translated. If someone can sit down and tell you what their work is from start to finish, why on earth did you make it? Why didn't you just write it down? There has to be something ambiguous. There has to be the God-shaped hole. Because otherwise, what are we doing? If you can state it literally, why make the art in the first place?
That's an interesting approach because I see art as an expression. Well, I think a lot of people see it as an expression of the self, but also, in my personal experience, it's I have something that I need to share. I really there's a part of me that feels the desire and the need. It really is a need to showcase something that I thought of, something that's been in my head that I want people to see, and it also I think it's a showcase of myself. I'm like, this is why I'm showing it to you because it represents who I am on the inside. So when you say it, I'm trying to rephrase it correctly. You said if you can phrase it,
If you can write down everything that your art is and means, you're missing something.
I think that's extremely pertinent today, especially with artificial intelligence that's on the rise.
Sure,
You know?
but here's the thing. Let's also be real. Like, you can be moved by a piece of AI if it's something that speaks to you. Our AI is not precluded from making art because art really is about, is it moving someone? So that's a separate topic.
You're detaching. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
You're detaching the artist a little bit from the art in this case, then.
Marcel Duchamp himself did the exact same thing. 1921, he makes he delivers a work of art, which is a urinal that he did not make, and all he did was sign it, the name R. Mutt. Not even his own name, he signed it, because he said it's art because an artist signed it. But there's no craft. Nothing. Only the craft of someone who was not trying to make art in the first place, which is someone working in the urinal factory. So we have to and can disseminate the art and the artist. And sometimes it's important that they're in the same place, and sometimes it's important that they're not. There is no formula for it, but what I can tell you is, if you are at the mercy of specificity, you're probably leaving something that you're trying to express behind.
But in your particular case, which is when you're doing it for a living, you do have to leave something behind, do you not?
I think it's about the type of work you're making. If your ambition is to make high art in the form of a game or something else, then that piece of human truth that you're going to try and express somehow will be the core of your product. Or if you're writing Call of Duty, guess what? You cannot grow that product without some tiny little nucleus of human truth in there too. You can't tell that story without something to do with the human condition. It is inevitable as an artist, whether you're paid or unpaid, you will not be able to remove your humanity from your work. So anybody out there who's afraid of selling out, let's say, it's impossible to sell out.
You generally believe that?
Of course, you cannot remove
the self from the art?
Yourself completely from art, even if it's commercial art.
Yeah. Objectively,
somebody writing the Minecraft movie.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, it's not just about the fun of it, right? It's also about one of those 8 writers that worked on it had an experience that was real and contextualized it through the commercial lens of that movie. A piece of human truth is the seed from which all products on the commercial art scale are grown. How high it is in the mix depends on the product. But you don't have to be afraid of somehow losing your soul by making something that earns a living.
Commercial, yeah. Well, What about when you end up, especially with AAA, having to work with big teams? I'm assuming they didn't, for Crisis 2, they didn't go, hey, Rob, write the whole thing by yourself, right? You're having to work with multiple people at the same time. Wouldn't you say that? Well, it's not a wouldn't you say it. I'm curious as to how you feel that impacts your art and your ability to storytell when you have to work with other people in tandem. Or, first of all, I don't really know if it's you guys are working by parts of the story. How is it really entirely yourself, you know?
Well, okay. First of all, in the case of Crysis 2, I was really on the multiplayer side. It was Richard Morgan was the main writer on that multiplayer cast. But as I was saying earlier, when you are an artist coming into a commercial world, you're usually arriving with the desire to express, but not the craft to do it with accuracy. And so a lot of the time when people first start their careers as artists with a capital A, which is to say anybody in the arts,
Yeah.
If you're with a team, oftentimes those new people will say, oh, trust me. But the reason why they have to say that is because they can't say, this is how I'm doing it and why. And that's what the craft is for. The way you persuade people to come with you is to show them your method, not to try and bowl them over with your passion. Passion can be persuasive,
Yeah.
but the way that you keep an efficient team moving forward is with craft. And the thing that's tough about that, and I suffer from this as well, when I first came into the industry, I was nothing but desire without craft, nothing but. And it bit me in the butt, because it can go well if you get lucky, but you can't replicate it because you don't know how you did it.
Yeah.
So
it's having a certain
down.
methodology and being able to learn from it. But okay, I worry that being able to structure and really methodologize and quantify your process sometimes will lead to, and this is personally me from my own experience, because I know that sometimes when I have some good jazz music playing and I start writing and I get into a flow state and I feel like Ernest Hemingway all of a sudden, I worry that by quantifying and by being so disciplined, I guess, in a professional sense, I'm losing a little bit of the artistic element. I'm losing a little bit of the self, and I'm filling that in with labor, I suppose. By losing a little bit of the passion, and by filling it in with the craft, I'm losing a little bit of what makes it so beautiful in my eyes. What made it so passionate? What made it so fun to read? And I worry, like, sometimes I read some of the older stuff that I've written personally, and it feels much more raw. Yes, there's grammar mistakes. Yes, there's a lot of, but it feels more pleasant. By the time I'm done reading it, I'm like, oh shit, that was pretty good. Young Yanis is he had something going on for him. And then I read some of my more recent stuff where I've really sat myself down and I forced myself to just hash it out, and I'm just like,
sure.
So how do you not sacrifice?
Your assumption there, first of all, is you're describing yourself as the audience.
That's also true.
And if that's who it's for, it really doesn't matter. But if you're trying to deliver it to an audience, oftentimes they need artistry along with the art. Also, it's not a smooth trajectory, because learning the craft is not something is not a switch that you flick on. That's something that you're going to get better and better and better and better at. The more reps you do, the better you'll get. And you'll still have dips. It's just the way it goes. So does that mean that you should remove it from your process? No, absolutely not. It means do the reps, build the muscle, get better. Because once you have command, that's when you really become indestructible. Picasso had an exhibition, and a plumber came to see it, and he said, my 5-year-old son could do that. Picasso said, yes, but why? Picasso was a master draftsman before he became a cubist.
That's true. I remember that.
And oftentimes you see young artists like an art school, they come in and be like, oh, I'm just going to draw this thing because it's just raw expression. But in truth, it's because they're not ready.
It's like if you can't draw an apple properly, let's not get ahead of
Right.
ourselves. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I see that a lot, even especially with young people these days who get a little bit exposed to overnight fame with celebrities and stuff like this. They forget that 99% of the time, no matter the craft, no matter what, you really have to put in the man hours in. I actually got a little question for you from a Reddit user, if I may. Rob, question. Have you written backstory or lore for non story driven games? In our case, we are a small indie startup in the middle of creating an animal collecting, save the garden ecosystem type of game. And it's not story driven, but we have developed lore which drives our world and frames some of the who and the why. I've worked with some other writers on different styles of projects, but I'm interested in your take on this kind of situation. How would you collaborate with a team, and what would the output end up looking like for this type of game?
Yeah, I've worked on that type of stuff. I mean, games as a service oftentimes is like that. You don't want to be story driven because you run out of game track very quickly.
Yeah.
But having said that, it depends also on what we're talking about when we say story, because to me, story is context. And the minute you say this cube is a cat, it's context. The minute you say Tetris is set in Russia, it's context. So okay, it's not a hero's journey, let's say, but that's narrative. That's thinking about what is it about, right? It's something beyond the pure mechanical. So what the output for that is probably what they're already doing, which is that you're saying this is who this character or creature is, this is their background, this is why they behave this way, but there isn't a story that character is going to pursue. It's just the context of the game that they're going to exist within.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to tell you exactly who that was. I think Max the Gray will be very happy with that answer. I actually wanted to ask you another quick question. So we were talking about methodology, and this kind of crossed my head. Personally, what do you do to sort of like, you've got a story to tell. How do you begin? Are there any particular parts you focus on first? Do you have any advice on how to just get started?
I think it depends on how you're going to find your way into the story. But if we're just talking about linear media for a minute, not necessarily games, but this is still pertinent to games. We have to be cognizant about how entertainment is found and consumed. So look, the odds of a user going onto Netflix, rowing across 10, columning across 5, landing on the tab, and that converting to a view, the odds of that happening are 0. No one's doing that. And the only way that the studio can de-risk that problem is with cast, who are super expensive, with the algorithm, whose influence ends on the edges of the platform, or with premise that's free. Because ultimately, no matter how much money a studio spends on trying to make a movie successful, a large part of its viability comes down to somewhere in the world, 2 people are going to have a conversation who I will never meet, 2 strangers. One of them is going to say to the other one, what's it about? And if the answer to that question is not so laser beam precise that somebody who does not pitch things for a living can't deliver it in a way that is clear, concise, and persuasive, you're in big trouble. So I think number 1 is when somebody says, what's it about? That answer needs to be absolutely airtight, precise. That's part 1.
Okay.
Part 2 is where we start to bring in maybe what you think of as the art, right? Let's think of that as commerce. Although it is also fun. But oftentimes you read material from newer writers who are trying to figure out how to keep drama in the air. How do you keep people smashing against each other? And it might be like you and me going to fight over a sandwich. Yeah, that's conflict. But does it speak to what we're trying to speak to in this movie? So for me, that comes down to theme. And when we talk about theme, I think it's a troublesome word because different writers and different types of artists have a different definition of what it means. If you say to, let's say, a CG artist, right, or somebody making actual art assets in a game,
Mm-hmm.
so what's the theme of the game? They might say, well, the theme is red, or the theme is, or you might go to a designer or a writer and say, they might say, oh, the theme of the game is fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem, is that saying the theme is fatherhood doesn't give us drama. Not yet. It gives us a subject, doesn't give us a theme. Because what theme is, in my estimation, is a morally slanted question to which there is no clear binary answer. By which I mean, if you look at a movie like The Dark Knight, as an example, hopefully everybody's seen The Dark Knight. At the center of that movie, I'm guessing, but at the center of that movie is a question that I think is probably something like, what is justice? And you can't say justice is yes, and you can't say justice is no. There are many subtle shades.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Rachel Dawes, who believes that the law is justice. You have Commissioner Gordon, who says, well, the law is justice, but I'm going to let Batman beat people up, but I won't do that because that's not my justice. You have Batman, who'll beat people up, but he won't kill them because that's not justice. And then you have the Joker, who believes that chaos is justice. Mm-hmm. And then you have Harvey Dent, who travels from one end of that spectrum to the other. And you can put any of those characters in any combination, in any scene, and they always have something that is thematically relevant to conflict about. The drama is always connected to that central thematic question. And if I said the theme is justice, that conflict doesn't exist. It only exists when they have a question to answer and they have different answers because of their answer, because of their position on it. So the two things are, what's it about in a way that a stranger is going to convince another stranger when they tell them? And second, what is the central thematic question? If you can find those two pieces, you've got the prerequisites of art and commerce in that product.
Okay. Sorry, give me a second, Rob, because I feel like I'm being inundated with. This is extremely valuable, and I hope everybody who's paying attention and when we're going to put this on YouTube is going to be able to learn as much as possible from this, because I never thought of it that way, as essentially the theme is essentially a platform through which we can discuss different facets of one argument.
Absolutely, and that extends beyond writing. I mean, once you have that thematic question, you can hold up other parts of the product against it. How does the music explore the idea of justice? How does the design take a position in answering that question?
And this is where I can actually, this is what I can appreciate your craft, and clearly you've broken down what the theme means, and this is exactly why you're able to make something that's commercially viable, is because you understand we need this element, and we need this element to be able to have something that functions well together. I understand.
None of this is a guarantee of anything, but it's a way to try and increase your viability.
Okay, sorry, Rob. I feel like I'm in deeper waters than I expected here.
But the truth is, look, everybody kind of knows this intuitively. But all I'm talking about with craft is the things that you feel, if you are able to express them and tell other people, this is why I'm doing it, and this is how we're going to get there. If you can do that, you're more likely to get there because you can stay on message, and you can convince other people to come with you, which is going to help. So sitting alone in your room making art for yourself has its place, but the minute you want to step out of that arena, you need craft, because you need other people. You need to collaborate.
You need methodology. And yeah, it's methodology means progress, right? I see it even in the gym. You go in the gym, you don't really pay attention to what you're working out on, and then at the end of the day, no progress. And then, Then can I ask you, for somebody, especially in this day and age and in this current environment of open-ended games, especially with games that have live service, or just kind of, how would you go about or advising people to create, I guess, a universe that's relatively interesting, or interesting enough for people to be willing to test a game out? For example, League of Legends is not exactly a story-driven game, and yet a lot of the people manage to get into the backstory, manage to read about the characters, do you have any advice and recommendations on how to approach these new mediums where story is clearly not directly relevant to the progress of the gameplay. When you're playing the game, doesn't matter who you're playing as. You can be playing as mortal enemies, but nobody cares. But people still have some curiosity and some. How would you go about? Um,
I think the temptation with like a hero roster
mhm.
is to accidentally do boilerplate characters. But if
The what?
ever there
Sorry.
was a place to do boilerplates,
Ah, yes.
but if ever there's a place to not do that, it's on a hero roster because you don't have the same. Yes, you want to keep the lore consistent, which I know that League of Legends has struggled with over the years. Um, but the shackles are off. You can do something really nuts and interesting and crazy, and then you do get to be kind of flamboyant with your creativity, whether that is whatever tone that is. You get to be flamboyant within it. And I think there's no harm in building a tapestry of narrative for those characters because you never know what maybe you are going to build the next league, and you want to have enough stakes in the ground to diversify into other media. But it's lower stakes for sure.
I'm a bit confused. I'm going to be honest. What do you mean by it's lower stakes?
Well, if you're writing something that is a story that must have a character change and must follow a sequence of events, you're confined.
Lower stakes. I understand what you mean in the sense that because the gameplay doesn't depend so much on the actual characters, you can take more creative liberties. Yeah, that's true. That's really true. I mean, World of Warcraft is they've had the liberty of just destroying the world entirely and starting it from scratch. They're like, let's just backtrack and do all of that. But are you a big gamer yourself, by the way?
Of course.
Yeah.
I've been doing I've been doing since I was a kid. My first thing I played the game on was BBC Micro, and then to Amstrad, then to Amiga 500.
Wow.
And then I had to be friends with the kids who had a Mega Drive and the SNES, and then I had to wait, and eventually got PS1, so I had to wait a long time to the Amiga 500 and that. Then PS2, PS3, Xbox 360. I mean, most of what I do now is actually VR. That's the thing
I noticed. I was going to ask you if it's but I feel like it's not that different in terms of storytelling for you, is it?
Well, it's interesting because when I first started doing stuff for VR, I think the thing that all devs have to do when you have a new platform that you're going to make something for,
Let's try it out.
You're going to try and figure out what can this do that we couldn't do before, and what is this platform predicated towards in terms of content. So in the case of VR, the thing that, at least initially, was most fun to do was look around. So we made a murder mystery called The Invisible Hours.
Yep.
It's all about observation and narrative and interpreting people's behavior, because all you're really doing is looking. Now I love stuff that's really active. I'm indestructible in VR. I can do a backflip in VR, and my legs can be on the ground, and I can have the head do a backflip. I've got really strong sea legs. So I can do all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I worked a little bit on Half-Life Alyx.
Did you really?
I did a little bit on it. Not the main part was Sean Banner did that, I think, the meat of it, and Jay as well.
Because I was going to ask if you tried it out, and because Half-Life Alyx is a pioneer in the VR. Yeah, Did you like it?
Well, I worked on it, so yeah.
I mean, you could have worked on it and not liked it.
No, I think they did a great job. I was only on it for a year.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah. I'm really surprised that there haven't been more forays into the VR. Like we've gotten Half-Life Alyx, and then it kind of puttered out a little bit. I feel like there haven't been any big AAA.
Alyx was no other company but Valve could have done that, because when you're budgeting how much you're going to spend on a production, that's relative to hardware sales, right? How big is the market? Therefore, how much can we spend in making something? Half-Life Alyx really was a way to try and convince people to come into the hardware market. So until that market expands significantly.
Yeah, exactly. I remember there was also a few PvP games, some of them like rollerblading games, but nothing like the scale of Alex, which I just did
Well,
look.
there is stuff now that's approaching that. I mean, Wanderer is in that space. A lot of stuff on PSVR is
Okay.
I would say, as impressive.
Have you been focusing into VR in recent years as opposed to?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Most of certainly as a gamer,
Yeah.
all I do is VR. I haven't played a flat game in a long time.
No, you're kidding me.
Yeah, really, really love it. It's
Oh, man,
fantastic.
you're
Use it
more
every day.
modern than me. I'm on my laptop half the time.
And I'm telling you, it's the best because, for example, right,
Yeah.
if you're playing COD, right,
Yeah.
you've pressed X to reload
Yeah.
400,000 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time you press it, you're watching an animation of someone else's hands reloading the gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're in VR, I'm like, oh, it's me who has to pop the slider, and I have to do all of this.
Yeah.
And suddenly, mechanics that you probably either don't notice anymore, or maybe you're even actively bored of, are now suddenly super compelling again.
Yeah.
So it's not even that VR needs to create new types of games. It's just a different lens to view pre-existing styles of games through, and you're like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I personally don't have VR, but I got to try Super Hot, I think it's called. The one where you freeze
Right,
time.
time moves when you move.
Yeah, the concept was so beautiful, and man, the backflips I was trying to do and the 360s, it's true. The basic mechanics that you've taken for granted for years, all of a sudden they're given so much novelty. But at the same time, you probably, well, you know the medium a lot better than I do because I've been focusing mostly on indie and just computer games recently. But I feel like the choice of games is fairly limited, isn't it? In VR?
I think at this point you would struggle to play everything out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of titles. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Now, are you preferring to work more on games or on movies, or is it more like movies for money, games for fun?
I would like to think that they're all fun.
Okay.
I think it changes from year to year. I mean, this year it's sort of 50-50. Last year it was mostly movies with one game at the end.
Did you? I have to ask. Did you get to meet John Cena or no?
Of course.
No, and you got to see him because I heard you can't see.
Well, yeah. I can tell you that his hands are the size of a snow shovel.
Really, he's as big as they show him on TV.
Well, we're probably about the same height, but he has just a ginormous hands. But also an incredibly smart guy. I don't know if people know that, but he is. I would not use this term liberally. I think he actually is a bona fide genius in the Einstein sense. He taught himself Hindi, taught himself Mandarin, taught himself jazz piano. Like, wow. The guy is super smart, super smart.
And surprisingly eloquent. I've watched interviews with him when he's not in character or anything, and I'm just like...
He's a highly intelligent man. And also, you don't get to where he is without being very smart.
That's also true. That's also very, very true. And you also got to work with the lovely Aquafina, if I'm not mistaken?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
She's very down to earth. Very down to earth. I mean, she is as she presents, just a really good, down to earth, decent person.
But I'm kind of curious in the sense that when you work with actors and stuff, obviously I assume they have some say, and I also think a lot of them probably want to contribute to the storytelling process, as opposed to games where the characters are essentially non-existent. They're voice actors that kind of follow.
I wouldn't say voice actors are non-existent.
Well, not sorry. I meant the individual character is not a person who's going to contribute to their story. Do you see what I mean?
They may. All of that stuff is a possibility. Depends on the people. Depends on the game. Depends on the studio. In the case of Jackpot, that particular movie, the cast came on quite late in the script development process. Okay. But you still make adaptations to try and improve it in a way that's in their voice, right? You don't want somebody to perform something that feels like it's not meant for them. So you try and curate it for them like a tailored suit. But most of the time, the person with the most governance over the script, other than the writer, is the director. So it's not necessarily so much the cast.
How much vetoing power do you usually have with directors?
With directors,
Yeah,
none.
none. It's
The directors of the movie. I
yeah.
work in service to them.
But
I
you
mean,
do you, I'm assuming you have some sway with the storytelling and
the way a professional writer sees it when you're writing a movie
Mhm.
is I do everything. Oh, for instance, if you're working the way I do, which is doing what's called writing on spec, where I write a script and then try and sell it, right?
Mhm.
So I've expressed my vision to say this is what I think it should be,
Mhm.
and I now trust that if somebody picks that up and says, okay, we're going to try and make this, their job is not to do what I wrote. Their job is to do what they need to do to make that movie happen.
Okay.
And some of that will be practical to say, oh, we can't afford to do X or Y. And some of that will be creative to say, we don't want to do A or B. And my job as a writer is to work in service to those people to follow the chain of command. What you don't want is to be wrestling with the director saying, well, my vision, my magnum opus is that this person should fall down the stairs instead of climbing up the stairs.
Yeah, it's
At that
because
point,
ultimately it's not your vision; it's theirs. You're just
right.
putting a
In
voice to them.
TV, it's a little different. Although I haven't worked much in TV, but that's much more
Involved?
writer producer led. But in film, my job is to work in service to the director who comes on.
Can I ask why you didn't want to work in TV, or is it just lack of opportunity?
I just haven't gone down that path.
Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting. We
Maybe
mentioned.
I trust directors more than other writers do. That must be.
I wanted to ask you a question that it's a little bit tough to ask, but and it's also based on anecdotal experience, so I could be completely wrong, but it seems to be a common opinion when I ask a lot of my friends and family, and maybe I'm just growing old.
Is this
But
a medical question?
No, I think we're
Okay,
good for now.
what do you got?
But when I cough, my no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
When I've noticed in recent years, especially the last decade, a steady decline in quality of, first of all, script writing and, well, dialogue, and also in just storytelling, especially. Granted, my consumption has been a little bit more limited in recent years, but the movies I've been seeing at the movie theaters and even Netflix, Amazon, Apple, all of that, given the budget that these productions have, it feels like compared when I watch shows or even movies from the 90s, early 2000s, 2010s, it feels like there's been a slight downgrade in a lot of movies. It feels a lot rarer to see a movie where I'm like, oh, this is a lot novel. And I wonder if it's because of the output that's necessary by these big production houses like Netflix, Amazon Prime. Can you...
Can I explain that?
Yes.
Sure. You got grandparents?
Do I have grandparents?
Mhm.
Yes, I have two grandmothers in Algeria at the moment.
What do they watch on TV? New stuff or old stuff?
Old stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
You're a grandma now.
That's what... Is that what it is?
You're getting old. Like all of the stuff that we loved. Oh, why aren't they making Con Air and Face Off anymore?
Yeah.
The answer is you're getting old.
Okay,
Sorry,
listen. I want to believe you, Rob, but when I'm not like I grew up in the 90s, but obviously I didn't, like, my parents still put some restrictions. I wasn't 6 years old watching Goodfellas. I wasn't, so I still feel like these movies from the 80s and the 90s. What was that movie with Vince Vaughn where it was a slightly more baby something? I just watched it recently. I forgot. Swingers. That's what it was. When I see these movies and I feel like yeah, sorry, I feel like they're a lot more full of soul, risk taking. They're a lot more innovative. I don't know. I just when you see Pulp Fiction, which was granted, 30 years old now.
When did you watch it for the first time?
When did I watch Pulp Fiction for the first time? 10 years ago, maybe. Is that you still think that's what it is?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It's the way it goes. We all
think-
start getting old. Like, listen, the music that I listen to, I'm like, I'm going to stay hip. I'm going to listen to this. But I find myself just creeping back
To the
Evening back.
classics.
Yeah, here I am listening to Biggie again.
But okay, but you see, I don't feel that way about music. I feel like a lot of musical
Right.
artists in this
You're
day and
still
age,
young enough
musically.
to hold on to some
Rob,
music. Fantastic.
you don't think that due to the output that these big production houses like Amazon, Netflix, and everything have to do, they've suffered a little bit in the script writing department or in the
No, I
no?
think there have always been good movies. There have always been bad movies. Difference is you didn't
As
have the same access
to
to
the
bad
bad
movies.
ones. I think yeah, that might be it. Uh, that's true. Because back then, what would you see? You'd see the 6, 7 movies that are in theaters at a time,
Right.
and then you would end up seeing the good ones.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Like if you went to Blockbuster,
mhm,
you could find the shit movie, no
that's
problem.
true. That's true. Fair enough.
You
Yeah,
could
I have
find
access.
a C-list Steven Seagal movie if you want, if you go to Blockbuster.
First of all, that's a lot of disrespect for Mr. Seagal. He's a professional Aikido master. Be careful. But
You're right. I hope he doesn't see this.
wherever he is in Russia at the moment. But okay, I wanted to ask what creative works have impacted you the most in your career? Or do you feel like, wow? Like for me, it's Whiplash. I remember seeing Whiplash. I was on an airplane and I saw it on a tiny screen and I was at the edge of my seat and I remember feeling emotions, like you said, a God-filled hole that finally got filled, and I was like, oh, this speaks to me both on a human level, on a masculine level, on I don't know. So I have to ask for you, what were your whiplashes?
Gosh. Um, at my age,
Mm-hmm.
you start to see that nucleus that I was talking about in
Mm-hmm.
everything. I see it in a TV commercial. I see it in someone tapping a pencil on a book. You see it in a movie that's bad. You get
Mm-hmm.
to see the attempt, and that I love to see. One of my favorite things to do is go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which happens every year in Scotland in the month of August.
Mm-hmm.
And in that month, every single space of that city, the pubs, the toilets, the museums, the rooftops, the Airbnbs, they're all filled with people putting on performances, trying to make art, filled with people succeeding and failing at making art. And that is so profoundly joyful to walk in and find someone making bad art and watch them try. That to me is the most invigorating inspiration.
I admire that. I think I'm not at that level of wisdom or maturity because maybe it's the overly harsh self-criticism coming up from an Arab family, but I guess seeing I have a hard time with what I would quote unquote call bad art. And especially when I see the nucleus and I see that the delivery isn't up to quote unquote, and I mean, what I'm going to say is extremely pretentious, so please judge me, but internally, when I see the failure of doing good art for one reason or another, I end up a little bit too critical, and sometimes I have a hard time, especially in movies. I see it all the time. I'm like, this movie could have been so much better if they had.
But you don't really mean this movie could have been better. What you mean is, when is it my turn?
Yeah, that's also true. It's
The
inflated
minute you
sense of
start
ego.
to accept that, you're going to move closer to it being your turn. It's easy to spend your life as a critic. It's hard to hold on to the pull-up bar and pull.
Stop, Rob. Please stop. You're hurting me. This is the therapy I never knew I needed.
Look, it's easy to do that, and it's very easy to it. That to me is like that's hot tar.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling.
Yeah.
You can sink into that and be suffocated and snuffed out as an artist if that becomes your routine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you look at somebody who's made a shit short film and go, you know what? They fucking went for it, and that means I'm going to go for it too.
All right. I think I'm gonna have a hard time falling asleep tonight. But and I want to ask you the same question that I asked you before about the movies in regards to games. Have there been any games that really marked you from a storytelling perspective? That for me it was Jet Set Radio Future and Shenmue. I don't know if you've ever heard of these
Oh, of
two.
course, Shenmue, iconic. I mean, the thing that Shenmue actually I would say is on that list because it did had such confidence at the time where you
Yeah.
never did the following, which is that Shenmue understood the value in boring the player on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't know, Shenmue was at the time pretty high fidelity open world game on the Dreamcast, where the story was you're going to take revenge on the guy that killed your father.
Yep.
But what that ultimately means is you're going to play 50 hours of running around city streets in order to play one round of Virtua Fighter against the guy that killed your dad. Why don't you just buy Virtua Fighter and play 500 rounds? The answer is the context is the power. And there's a whole section in it where, and at the time this was revolutionary, you had to go and get a job.
Yeah, with
and
the
go 9 to
forklift.
5 at a job as a forklift driver.
That's so
But what
fun.
that meant was is that when something happened in that story,
Yeah.
it was like, holy shit, this is high stakes, meaningful moment. It wasn't
Yeah.
trying to keep you entertained all the time. It was willing to let you walk away.
Did you play
So
the
number one,
second?
Shenmue definitely is an influence. I think about that all the time. Also, the first Metal Gear on PS1, Metal Gear Solid, that was the first game where you could tell it had been thoroughly researched. Prior to that, I'd only really played games that were entirely fantasy. And here it was a marriage of real geopolitics with fantasy.
Yeah.
And that was a revelation too, to say, wow, you really can take influence from these things that seem like things I shouldn't care about, age 19 or whatever it was.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid was. I started a little late. I started on the fourth, and then the fifth one with the Phantom Pain. Exactly. The problem with Hideo Kojima is I have a hard time with the grandiosity. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but it's the story gets. Did you play Phantom Pain?
Mm-hmm.
It felt intentionally so fragmented in ways that I had trouble understanding what was going on, and maybe it's because I hadn't started with Metal Gear 1, but I had a very 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 rough time with it. Did you play
But
Shenmue?
isn't it fun that
Huh?
he's doing it? But isn't it fun that he's doing it?
I respect it. I tried even with Death Stranding. I really admired the fact that he took a risk. I always commend when there is a risk that is being taken, especially in this, and I think it's even more important in this day and age, when we have the big houses like Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed Shadows, or which is essentially Assassin's Creed 15, and we're getting less and less novel games. I think it's really beautiful whenever somebody tries to go and do something different. That's why I really 2 weeks ago or last week we interviewed Thomas Mahler, the guy behind Ori and the Blind Forest, and we had a big discussion. I don't know if you want. I can send you the video about the necessity for him to make his new game, which is called No Rest for the Wicked, which is a complete departure from Ori and the Blind Forest. I don't know if you know Ori and the Blind Forest. It's a Metroidvania similar to Hollow Knight. And he was like, after Ori 2, we needed to take a step back. I've always wanted to make another game, and just for my own identity, because he said it was 10 years of his life just making this one thing that becomes who he is. He felt the need to really take a step back, and yeah, I just I thought it was really interesting. I don't know. So I think you're right. I need to do some introspection in regards to my lack of artistic output and ask myself why I've been so stagnant. I think it's fear. A big part of it is fear of criticism, but most of all fear of my own criticism of it not being good enough. I've been sitting on 3 stories, and I don't know. I'm hesitant to just pull the trigger because I feel like I'm not wise enough, or I'm not ready to showcase these stories.
Let me reframe it for you.
Yeah.
Let's say tomorrow you could make the perfect work of art.
Yeah.
Why the fuck would you want to do that?
Yeah.
Because then what? Then what? Another one? What's the point? You already made the perfect.
You already
What's
made the
the
perfect
point?
one. That's true.
Just fucking dig a hole in the garden, lie in it, and bury yourself. Because you already did it. Brilliant. You completed making perfect art. Or
Jesus.
do you understand
Yeah,
the journey is the destination?
man. All right, I got the Gandalf explanation. I think I owe you a few pull-ups. I wanted to ask you. Yeah,
Making bad art is
is
good art.
that's true. God damn it. Ah, Rob, I wasn't supposed to be hit with so much wisdom at this hour. I was supposed to. This was supposed to be a very mellow discussion, but I
This is
appreciate it.
mellow.
This is
You're having
mellow, but
fun.
this is churning emotions inside me that I don't want to feel at this hour or ever. This is art in and of itself. But I want to ask you one last thing. Maybe you're not allowed to answer, so you can tell me, hey, for privacy reasons, have there been any movies or games that you've worked on and you were just like, holy fuck, this is terrible, like
Oh,
we
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
When I first got into the industry,
yeah,
I so I was at art school
mm-hmm,
trying to be a performance artist. I got, by incredible bizarre turn of fate, I got friendly with a two-person Indian Asian production company,
okay.
and I started writing for Indian cable TV in the UK. I was getting paid £50 a week writing Indian TV shows. Really good fun.
That sounds awesome.
And while I was writing that,
Yeah,
I wrote a script for a sitcom that never got made, but
okay,
the script was shortlisted for a New Writers Award in the UK that was around at the time called TABS.
okay,
And by incredible coincidence, a video games company in the Midlands in the UK happened to be looking for a games writer at a time when that wasn't really a thing.
mm-hmm,
And they happened to get in touch with this very obscure awards body and said, hey, does anybody want to write a game? And I said, I've been playing games since the BBC Micro. I'll do it. I went overnight from a show where the budget for the show every week was £250 total to a $30 million game with no idea what good writing was. All I had was enthusiasm and no crafts. And even though I was delighted to be there, I was naive. I didn't know that I was in for a big fall, because that was a super high profile at the time, super high profile game in which I was essentially the public face of it in a great many ways,
yeah.
with no idea how good things get made.
Do you
So
care to share what the game name was?
it was a game called Haze on the PS3. It was meant to be like
I know Haze on the PS3, the one with the broken yellow.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
catastrophic disaster. That's not just because of me, but there were various weaknesses on the team. But I spent the next 10 years clawing my way out from under the wreckage of that production. It took a long time for me to grow my career back after that.
Really?
So it was bad because I thought that my enthusiasm was enough, and it ain't.
This is extremely. Well, this is interesting. I didn't realize that it was such a catastrophic failure, as you said.
Yeah.
And it impacted you really.
Of course, yeah. It essentially nuked my career for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was personally, emotionally very hard, of course, to go through that. But there is no better way to learn how not to make a bad game than by making a really bad one and taking the lessons from it.
How did you deal with it? Like, how the whole process, was it just getting back to work, or did you take some time to grieve?
I was off of the failure of that game. I was a pariah in the industry. Nobody wanted to touch me, and I was lucky that the team I made it with were willing to keep me on until such time that I was able to segue into other things. But it was very tough. It was very tough.
Shit.
To go from the confidence that you feel as an artist, because you're like, well, I think it's, my intention is in my head and therefore it must be on the page. But as I said at the start of this conversation, there is no further distance between the forehead and the page.
Exactly.
It's a long way for the work to travel, and most of it doesn't get there. It takes a lot of craft to translate what's in here onto the page.
Haze was the one where you had like a super serum kind of thing that halfway through the game gets removed from you, correct?
Right.
And I remember reading a review about it, but I had actually, surprisingly, I remember reading a review about it back in the day where they actually said the idea behind the game, the nucleus, was solid. The fact that you're experiencing withdrawal and everything, and then, so, but you blame yourself a little bit, would you say, for, well, not blame
Yeah.
yourself, but
The parts that I was involved in that were bad were because I was bad at it.
okay, damn. Are you working on anything new or secret that we're allowed to know about?
Secret? No.
No.
But non-secret. The next thing we have coming up is working on a movie at Netflix, an action comedy. It's about a guy who has to punch someone in the face every 3 minutes or he'll explode.
Okay. What's it called?
It's called 3 Minute Warning.
And he has to punch people in the face.
Yeah, has to punch someone in the face every 3 minutes or he'll explode.
3 minute warning. And when's the release date for that?
Oh, we're still developing it.
Okay. Are we allowed to know who's in it, or
Oh, we haven't got to that yet either.
we haven't got to that yet either?
We're still on the script.
And are you planning on working in the games industry anytime soon?
I'm consulting on something at the moment that I can't
This-
talk about.
I can't talk about. Haze 2, The Return.
Listen, I talk about that all the time. Yeah, it's true.
Well,
Give the public what they want.
exactly. But honestly, that would be a great comeback story. I have to say, I'm extremely humbled, and I learned a lot tonight. And I'm sorry the chat was extremely quiet tonight. I think it's I don't know what happened. Twitch wasn't so kind today, but I promise you that we're gonna get a lot of questions on the YouTube, and if on the YouTube, man, you're right. I am growing old. And if you want, I will share with you the link so that you could feel free to comment on it as
Sure.
well. And a lot of these people are up and coming developers. Some of them are making indie games that I really think we're trying to do something. We know that we don't have the same marketing budgets as these big corporations, so I've been really trying to push that, a rising tide raises all boats, and that we really need to help each other to promote each other's games and give each other feedback and create these events. And one of the things I've also been playing around with a little bit in my head, and I'm throwing this out in case you would be interested in, is both seminars, or also I'm personally launching a game called Kumome. It's a board game along the lines of Hearthstone and chess, or Slay the Spire and chess. And I want to get industry powerhouses such as yourself, Thomas Mahler. The previous guy, I think you would be really interested in talking to as well. His name was Jason De La Roca. He works more on... Oh, you know Jason? Oh, yeah, you guys are LinkedIn buddies. I want to get people like this to basically have a sort of roundtable, and we ask you guys questions to debate or have discussions around. I don't know if that could be of any interest to you, but I think we could all really learn from these things, and also I get to see who's the smartest and fastest at my game. If any of you guys are
Unlikely to be me.
I honestly, after tonight's yeah.
I think we've reached the moment.
Yeah.
Let's no more messing around here.
Yeah. All
12,
right.
you said?
I said 5. I said 5 neutral because I did back
You said
today.
12 body weight, right? Let's
right.
see the 12.
First of all, I have to say I'm extremely, extremely happy that I put my pants on before the meeting. Because
The audience, I'm sure, is
I was hesitant. For half a second I was like, nobody's gonna see me stand up. Oh my god.
This is it. I'm psyched. So
All right.
12 body weight, right? That's what
All right. Wait,
let's see.
I'm gonna turn the volume so I can hear you. 1 second.
Okay, yeah, please.
Give me a second.
You got me?
I need to find my
Okay.
gloves.
You don't need gloves. Okay, you need just gloves.
Oh,
All right.
all right,
This
you
is a big
ready?
one. Okay.
You ready yet, Rob?
I'm ready.
I have gardening gloves because
Okay.
the bar is really slippery.
If you say so. You can say anything now, chat. Come on. Okay, he's got his garden gloves. Here we go. I'm ready. Let's do
All
it.
right, all
Let's
right.
see the 12.
Can you count? Can you count for me?
Of course. And by the way, I'm expecting 13. Let's not mess around.
All right, and please, censor my bald spot. Okay, it's in the back.
We'll do. Okay.
Thank you.
I won't mention it.
All right, let's do this.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Nice. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Come on, full extension. There we go. Come on. 11. Yes. Okay, I'll call you that. Go, you got one more. You got one more. You got one more. You got one more. I mean, let's be honest. You probably had 2 more.
Wait. I can't hear you. Whew.
I reckon you had 2 left in the tank.
The tank is already. I'm using nitrous. There's no gas left.
Fantastic work. Look at that. Unbelievable.
How much was that?
That was 13 reps. Come on.
Get out of here! Really?
Yeah, I would say rep number 9. Didn't see the full extension, but you came back.
Sorry. Let me give me a second.
Fantastic work. Well done.
I'm strong, but I got the belly, so I need a recuperation period. But
that's good. That's all. That's how you build the muscle.
Thank you so much, Rob. And wait, somebody in the chat I think mentioned, or no, DM'd me. Wait, sorry. I need to breathe. Thank you, Rob. I should have done this before. Yeah, I'm gonna try my best. I should have done this before, so I would have gotten the nerves out and been able to talk.
No, this is perfect. The perfect way to close it out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob, and have yourself a very lovely night. You're in the UK, correct?
I am.
Then enjoy your night, and thank you to everyone else who showed up. I'm gonna do my. Sorry, I'm gonna do my goodbyes. I'll let you have a lovely night. I'm gonna do my closure.
Pleasure. I look forward to more.
Thank you. Bye, Rob. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Rob. Oh, Jesus Christ, guys. Jesus. Did you see my pull-ups? God damn, bro. I was not expecting this. Well, thank you very much, Rob, for coming tonight, and everybody else who showed up. Today's, wait, let me just lower the volume a bit. Today's chat was a little bit quieter. I'm a little disappointed, but I'm still very happy that those who came. I know that the YouTube channel is going to be... Sorry, guys. It's going to be very successful. So I hope you guys got to learn quite a bit today. And honestly, I'm very humbled, and I'm at the same time very excited that I got to learn so much from such a smart guy. There's no way around it. The way he speaks, the way he talks about his own experiences, and the way he's able to convey so much emotion. And I thought it was really interesting, and I'm sorry I didn't get into it more, but how much Haze impacted him. I really am curious to learn more. But guys, I just want to say thank you for those who came. Sorry I'm out of breath. I just did so many pull-ups. Ugh. Thank you though. And it's always a pleasure to be here for you guys. So I hope we can make something fun. I don't have enough oxygen in my brain, but I'm sure those who are here enjoyed it, and those who will see it will as well. Thank you so much, guys. Wishing you guys a very lovely night. Goodbye and good night.